Okay, are we live yet?
Yes, we are.
Okay,
Okay, we go.
let's see. Welcome, everyone. My
Underneath
name is
everybody?
Madeline.
Yep, okay.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Madeline Morrow. I'm past president and I'm a member of the Going Native Garden Tour Committee. And this is one of our virtual garden tour, garden visits and chats with owners and designers presentation. And I wanted to let you know about other virtual CNPS SCV events. We're having another a special variety of a Going Native Garden Tour virtual tour next Tuesday, September 15th. It's going to be a visit to our chapter nursery, a video with video. We're going to have a planting demonstration and a chat afterwards. And this is the kickoff to ordering for our pickup fall plant sale, which I'll talk about a little later.
Madeline,
Yes?
it's actually, it's in October 10th, not next Tuesday.
Oh my God. Okay. Oops.
Oh, that's cute.
All right, it's, I have this out of order. I didn't update it, I'm sorry. So the next upcoming event is a talk by Ken and Dee Himes. And they went almost around the world. And Ken, I mean, Dee is an especially fantastic photographer. So I don't think you want to miss this presentation. Can't travel right now. Let's travel vicariously with Ken and Dee. And then on Saturday, October 10th at 10 a.m., we have our next GNGT virtual tour of the nursery and the planting demo. And this is the beginning of when we can start ordering for our pickup fall plant sale. Online ordering, pickup, contact-free pickup at the nursery from your car. Drive up, get plants loaded in your car. And at the demo, at the virtual tour on Saturday, Vivian will be there to answer your questions about plants. She'll be doing the demo. She'll be doing the tour. Chris KK is going to do a planting demo and commentary. So, and then you'll be able to start ordering plants, and you get a 15-minute pickup window. And I'll have a slide about that. And I just also want to talk about our next photography group sharing meeting. And I just want to pass along, I talked to Stephen Rosenthal, and he has been spending quarantine time studying the pollinators in his yard. And he has a whole photo series of plants and pollinators, and he's going to show photos from that. So, and Steve's photos are always fascinating. I'm going to give you a teaser before we go back and talk about the plant sale. That might be one of his photos there, but. So this is a sample of one of Steve's photos. This one happens to be a carpenter bee on some kind of allium. And this is the kind of clarity and detail that we're going to see with Steve's photos. So sign up for that. It's not to be missed. And if you have photos to present, you can sign up for that too. It's a very low-key, fun evening. Okay, now here is our beautiful poster made by Jean Struthers for this year's fall virtual plant sale, our first ever virtual, online plant sale and pickup. So if Saturday, October 17th pickup fills up, we can add other days. If you order before October 10th, you can get delivery to your house. And there will be more events coming. So you want to get onto our news list. You can subscribe to our news list with, it's a Google Groups. You can subscribe with this web, CNPS-SCV-news plus subscribe at googlegroups.com. And if you forget that, didn't manage to make a copy of it, if you just go to our website, cnps-scv.org, it's right there. This is about talking about
I'll type it in the chat room.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, good.
And if you want, we're doing a lot of virtual talks, and if you are interested in helping out to keep things moving smoothly, we have assistants to the hosts, and it's pretty easy. We can train you. It's not real hard. Johanna Kwan, her email is there, or me. If you want to talk to us about what is involved, that would be great. We're trying to build a team so the same people don't do it all the time. And if you're good at video editing, we record our talks on YouTube, and it's so far minimal editing. We take off some of the little noise at the beginning. So we'd be interested in hearing from you. And the way we're going to work our talks is that we're not going to take questions during the presentation, but you don't have to wait. If a question comes up for you, type it into the chat. Our moderator will read them to the presenter after each presentation. And whether you're on Zoom or on YouTube, we will be monitoring both of those chat, I think it's called comments on YouTube, and we will get all your questions. So we have two gardens to talk about today. First one is the Matadero garden in Palo Alto, and Melanie Cross, the owner, will be talking about that, and the designer Stephanie Morris is also here to answer questions about the garden. And then our other garden presenter is Claire Elliott for Ballpark Native Plant Garden, and I put on the URLs for going to pictures and videos about these gardens on our GNGT website, gngt.org. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Melanie. Melanie is a second generation rural Californian. She's always been close to nature. As a child, she was always outside observing creatures, and when she was grown, backpacking in the mountains. Melanie searched and read and searched out classes to learn the names of the wildflowers and how all the parts of nature fit together. Her biggest joy in owning a home has been gardening, and very quickly her interest in nature became an interest in gardening with native plants. She started helping at our nursery after joining the CNPS 10 or 15 years ago, and she was nursery manager for several years, learning more all the time. Now she's a happy nursery volunteer again. CNPS, GNGT, and the public gardens at Ball Park are ways for her to share that knowledge. And Stephanie Morris, who's also assisting, Stephanie has been working in the field of landscape architecture for 25 years. She grew up in San Jose and attended Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, graduating in 1995. As a child, she loved gardening with her father, hiking, art, and science. And landscape architecture seemed to be a great way to combine all of these interests. At Cal Poly, an inspiring California native plant class taught her more about California's plant communities. Stephanie decided to make it her focus to design with California native plants and learn from many mentors at CNPS along the way. She enjoys creating designs that respond to aesthetics, functionality, and ecology, with an emphasis on native plants, healthy soil, water conservation, and environmentally conscious materials. So, take it away.
It has to stop sharing.
Okay, I do.
Okay. All right.
So now that you're sharing,
Yes.
you are sharing, okay?
I am sharing.
Yeah, okay.
So please bear with me. I have something on my screen and I'm not sure how to get rid of it. I'll try.
Well,
Okay.
You
All
can
right. There I
stop
go.
share. You can make
Okay.
it bigger, or
And now I will
stop
make
sharing.
it bigger.
Yeah, click the green thing in the upper left corner.
Okay.
But you want to see your,
That's okay. But I can't remember how to make it do that. Oh, view. All right. So please, I hope you're enjoying
bottom of that list.
a,
Keep going.
Full screen.
there it is, the bottom. Okay. I hope you're enjoying the fact that I've never done this before. So here is the Matadero Garden in Palo Alto. My husband and I bought the lot 10 years ago. We're downsizing from our 3-story home with a 1-acre garden, which was primarily California native plants and also on the tour. We searched for several years for a smaller place with grown trees for me and for a southern exposure for photovoltaic array. Our goal was a 1-story, accessible, sustainable, and all-electric home. There are 2 solar arrays for a total of 15 kilowatts, which runs the house. And if you look at that skeleton of the house, one group of panels is on the long portion of the roof facing south, and the other group is between the 2 small outbuildings, which incidentally created a shady patio, which was wonderful. And we found this spot just around the corner from our tiny first home in the Barron Park neighborhood. The family we bought from had owned the land for over 100 years, gradually selling off an apricot orchard and strawberry fields in the 1920s, building a tiny, uninsulated but cozy cottage on the property, while taking extremely good care of the land. Besides the magnificent valley oaks you see in the front, there were numerous big hollyleaf cherries, Ribes viburnifolium, snowberry, and other natives. And I don't think they ever raked from leaves from under the trees, which left the soil in wonderful shape. And since you're joining me in fall instead of spring when the tour usually takes place, I can give you a glimpse of what the garden looks like in several seasons and let you know what some of my challenges have been here. I don't know if you can see them, but the biggest challenge is the ground squirrels, for whom this is home too. There are many tunnels in the Salvius bee bliss here, leading to their huge burrow. Between the tunneling underground and the low rainfall this winter, the dwarf baccharis branches have died back. I wouldn't have shown you those in the spring. I don't water under the valley oaks in the summer, but in late October or when temperatures cool off, I will coppice the coyote bush and water the area well to let them grow back from whatever roots remain. And I promise in coming winters, I will be sure to water during the dry spells. This is the opening to a 5,000-gallon cistern storing rainfall from all the downspouts. And because I don't water under the oaks, the sambucus is losing its leaves early. But notice the live oaks and the large hollyleaf cherries that were already here are refreshingly green. I love those hollyleaf cherries. On the east side of the house, my neighbor has redwood trees. So we planted a redwood understory, including Western Azalea, Philadelphus, Yerba Buena, and Myanthemum stellatum, known as false starry Solomon seal. And here is the starry Solomon seal in bloom. It forms a colony on the bank. Unfortunately, well, by late summer, it's seasonal, they've withered back to stalks with berries, similar to the hound's tongue across the way. By the way, both these beautiful perennials are easy to grow and available at the chapter nursery. This time of year, they're dormant, so you'll be buying what looks like a pot of dirt, just to warn you. Here we are, looking down the dry creek. You see ribes viburnifolium and snowberry were already here and have filled in. I added iris heuchera, canyon sunflower, meadow rue, and a few shrubs. Here's the Catalina perfume with berries in the winter for birds. And the Douglas iris flowers from the end of February, usually through April. Rounding the corner of the house, we enter the sunny backyard. This part of it is irrigated weekly. In spring, there are poppies and annuals, which germinate readily in the crushed gravel mulch. In the foreground is one of my favorite plants in the garden, a heuchera Wendy, which volunteered in this spot 6 years ago by seeding into the base of the rock retaining wall. I found plants that volunteer from seeding into spots usually grow better than those transplanted from containers. So I give them their space when it doesn't interfere with something else. In the background, you see the biggest Quercus lobata on the property, my husband, who handles all things technical here, and blooming Encelia californica, and a close-up of that will come in a minute. Here's the same view from a few steps back under the shade of a coastal live oak in December. Because it is watered, this buckeye has both leaves and fruit at the same time. And blooming is Epilobium select matole and also Corythogene, the gray plant, if you can see that. This is the time when you want the shade, so that's why I stepped back. But in the springtime, poppies, California phacelia, Iris Canyon snow, and many things are blooming around the water feature. Later in the year, the monardella will fill out and bloom for months, providing food for pollinator insects later in summer. And there are a number of water-loving plants, such as yerba santa and seep monkey flower, which flourish directly into the water. The great blue heron has fished out almost every koi, but there's still life in the water, including many types of dragonflies all summer. We get lots of fly-catching birds, and there are resident screech owls, which sleep perched under the eaves. Hawks, both red-tailed and red-shouldered, are in the neighborhood, and sometimes they bring their lunch to enjoy it in the oak tree branches. Ceanothus maritimus valley violet blooms for several months, at the same time as the poppies. Several late blooming annuals, including tarweed, sneezeweed, and Hooker's evening primrose, love this area, and as annuals do, they will take over. I've learned to limit them by removing seedlings in the spring. Blue-eyed grass also loves the crushed gravel mulch, which is only an inch or so deep, but helps to keep the soil from drying out in hot weather. However, the Sisyrinchium poppies and bluegilia fade away by June, leaving big bare spots, which are another of my challenges. To fill in the bare spots when the poppies and the bluegilia are finished, I planted sunflower, Helianthus californicus, and narrowleaf milkweed, which both come up in summer. The narrowleaf milkweed is the host plant for the monarch butterflies, but it doesn't thrive in my well-draining soil unless it is getting regular water. Above the watered area, there are drought-resistant plants, toyon, California buckwheat, apricot mallow, deer brush and deer grass, California fuchsia, and mugwort. Last fall, I removed the mugwort's ranging roots and contained it behind a root barrier, because as much as I love Artemisia douglasii, I also want to see the other plants. And it's coming back, you can see. You can't get rid of it. Oh, I didn't want to say that. You don't want to get rid of it. This cute little thing is Wright's buckwheat, which has been a dependable, tidy little plant for me, which occasionally reseeds along the edges of the pathway. It blooms this time of year. This plant and some other small buckwheats are usually available at the chapter nursery. As you see, it is habitat for some small creature in there. Here are Ceanothus dark star, showy milkweed, and a tall California fuchsia. Note the pathway, which is constructed of water permeable concrete. And although the lot has 17-foot elevation change, Stephanie designed this path so it allows wheeled access to almost all of it, except some central steps. This is Lepicinia fragrans from Southern California, called island pitcher sage. It tends to be a lanky shrub, but it responds well to pruning, and the leaves smell divine. If you grow it, you know that. This is Arcostocorthogene, what used to have the genus name Lysingia. It's flowering now, and it supports a lot of insects. In September now, looking past the coneflowers towards the large valley oak, you see more blooming California fuchsia, and in the distance, wands of white sage and island buckwheat is still blooming and turning rusty. Birds come this time of year to eat the seeds of all of these. There was a flock on the coneflowers this morning that disturbed. The coneflower, Rudbeckia californica, is from Sierra Meadows. Here it is next to a small coastal shrub, Ericameria ericoides, which will tolerate drier conditions than the coneflower, but they're both getting watered and it's happy. Here is Encelia californica, or bush sunflower in spring. If deadheaded, it blooms for months. This one isn't watered, so it finally goes dormant and needs to be severely pruned in late summer. January or February, Claytonia perfoliata, called Indian lettuce, carpets the ground under the valley oak. While we didn't plant it, we're delighted it is here and enjoy eating it for months. And I've planted scores of soap plant and here to come up a little later when the Indian lettuce is not so abundant. The bumblebees will love the soap plant. And interestingly to me, common fiddleneck, Amsichia intermedia, spontaneously appeared in this area in the past 4 years. So that's been fun to watch it coming. This is Diplacus or Diplacus trish, a monkey flower cultivar, which I bought at the CMPS nursery. Our monkey flowers used to be in the Mimulus genus, but recently have been split and renamed. A lot of us still use the term Mimulus to refer to them all. And here's a photo from a number of springs ago when Heuchera Wendy used to bloom in this spot near the patio outside the back of the house. It proved too sunny for them, and I've transplanted them to shadier spots. All the Heuchera tend to need cutting back, rooting the tops after a number of years anyway. And the iris clumps should be divided when the centers of the clumps die out. Both techniques are best done in late fall, which for me is the busiest season of the year. In winter and spring, I weed and enjoy blossoms, and in summer, I rest and gather seeds. If any new gardeners are interested, I recommend California Native Plants for the Garden and also California Native Gardening, a month-to-month guide by local writer Helen Popper. Both books will help you choose plants and care for your garden. And I would like to invite Stephanie to give us, oh, I forgot to tell you about this one. This is our ending, Farewell to Spring. Clarkia rubicunda ruby chalice, which is from Annie's Annuals. It's growing next to the very dependable Heterotheca San Bruno mountain. And I hope you enjoyed seeing aspects of the garden you wouldn't be able to see in spring. And Stephanie may have some comments to add to mine. In any case, she and I are happy to answer questions from you if you have any.
Thanks, Melanie. That was fantastic. You'd never know it was the first time you gave a presentation.
Okay.
That was great. Thank you so much. And it was really neat to see the garden kind of as a progression through the seasons. And I think the things that I would like to add right away are that, I mean, for me, it was an absolute pleasure working with Melanie because she knows as much and in many cases more about specific plants, native plants, especially some of the perennials. And so it was a really fun collaboration because a lot of these plants you're seeing in these pictures were her ideas that she added. I kind of helped with the armature and the overall master planning, like she said, the layout of the paths, some of the systems, and kind of refining where plant communities would be. And then, you know, a lot of that Melanie took on and embraced, and did so much fun experimenting in the garden from there. And one of the most enjoyable things was I was able to see the property. I think it was before the existing house was even demolished. So walking through and seeing this piece of property that was full of mature oaks and hollyleaf cherry, and trying to visualize which of these hollyleaf cherries are we going to keep. It was a dense thicket in some areas. And then seeing not only then the you know, how our design was going to lay out on the property, and now seeing it years later. And as with any garden, seeing what surprises happened, which things did better than we expected, which things were more challenging. And being able to incorporate a lot of the specific materials and design elements we did, like the pervious concrete paths were a great addition, and really worked well. Just the color, the texture, the material, the flexibility of it, and the naturalness of the shapes of the path. We included some little wood bridges that crossed the dry creek, and that really added some nice charm to it. And then Melanie also mentioned the rainwater system, where water's captured from the roof of her home and channeled through the downspouts, filtered, and then goes into a water tank so that it can be actually pumped and reused for the irrigation system. So that was a pretty high-tech system. We actually had a consultant come and do that, the specific design of that system. So that's kind of an overview. The other thing that was really fun was the creation of the pond, and bringing in some different types of natural stone, and weaving in natural stone walls and patios, and how we could then create little special sitting nooks, and like Melanie mentioned, little niches where plants were eventually able to grow, and sort of seeing how at the beginning it was very much, you know, a landscape that was full of stone and pathway. And now when you see it, you see the vegetation, and you see all the spontaneity of how nature kind of had its own ideas in a lot of cases. It's fun when you work with a client who can embrace that as a really enjoyable part of a yard, of a garden. I think the last thing I would probably also want to mention is the amazing mature oaks that were on the property, and the opportunities to work with those oak trees while trying to be extremely careful, because these are oaks that are super mature, and we wanted to, at all costs, for any new plants that we put in, protect the existing trees. So even when it came to positioning the house, positioning the driveway, those were all very, very carefully thought out. And then the planting we put underneath. It's going to have some dormancy in summer, but that's what those oaks need to be happy. And so that was always in our minds from the beginning. Am I forgetting anything?
No,
Okay.
but I am going to be watering in the winter.
Yeah, the winter is
It's a
okay.
very dry winter, and it
Yeah.
just didn't occur to me I should be watering those plants.
Well, I've done the same thing in many years in my own home, where it comes to March and I kind of realize, whoops, you know, I really should have been more on top of that. But sometimes it's the weeks go by, and you know, we're all busy, and sometimes there's so much we learn from going through different things and then realizing later. I mean, for me, I learned the same thing you did from experience of having a drought winter and then not watering, and realizing how it affected my garden that whole next year. And so then in subsequent years, I've done more watering in maybe January, especially February, than I would have paid attention to. And I really pay attention to it almost less in the summer and more in the winter now, which is kind of interesting. But I had to experience that kind of, aha, interesting, you know?
Yeah.
So, yep.
This is Penny. There's a few questions in the chat room. One of them is from KK. He's asking, do you always get berries on the ribes vivernifolium? He has a dozen of these and never saw a single berry on any of them.
These are pretty old plants, those ribes. They've been there a while. I don't know. Yeah, we do. We get berries. They all of a sudden show up. So maybe somebody's coming and adding them like a Christmas tree decoration. But they just show up and all of a sudden they turn red and then they're gone.
Well, I know the flowers are so insignificant that sometimes you forget
Yeah.
where the flowers have been. And so you forget about the berries until, like you say, they all of a sudden, whoop. Yeah. There's another question about how many hours per week do you typically spend on maintenance?
Well, weeding season, I spend several hours a day. So it's almost like it's therapy, especially this year. I do weed a lot. I thin out the poppies. One year I didn't, before I didn't do that, the poppies actually started becoming deformed, and I think they just didn't have enough air circulation. So now I thin out the poppies and thin out other plants and get rid of many like tarweed and evening primrose and some of the annuals that just would be so thick if you let them go. So that's the most. And other than that, maybe just 3 hours a week, I'd say, over the course of the year. A lot of pruning back this time of year. And then planting new things to take the place of things that didn't make it. That's about it.
Somebody wanted to know what the two books were that you mentioned. One was Helen
Oh,
Popper's book, and
okay.
then the other one.
This is the Bible, Bornstein. And the other, people don't know as much, but it's been out for a long time. It's Helen Popper's book on, is that the title?
California Native Gardening, a month-by-month guide.
Yes. So
And
it's
that's-
helpful to get you organized about when you might want to do things.
Yeah. And that's listed in the chat. So at the end, you can save the chat.
Great. Thank you.
Many of you, I don't know, it may not know the history of that book. That book originated, I don't even remember how many years ago it was. It must have been 15 or 20 years ago. We were doing our gardening with native meetings and Helen was taking notes and she said, I want to do this month by month thing and I'm going to take these notes. And she took her notes and we contributed and we talked about it every month. And, you know, the years went by and gardening with natives kind of morphed and evolved. And then all of a sudden, boom, she published it in a book. It was the coolest thing.
It was.
Okay, there's a few more questions.
Right. Yeah. Do ground squirrels hurt any of your plants? I think you mentioned something about that.
They're not like gophers where they're in there to eat the roots, but they burrow and they're very destructive in that sense. And they will occasionally, with a small plant, just destroy it. I've had that happen actually in the next garden I'm going to talk about with small, just newly planted things. But with the Baccharis, that was their major burrow area before we ever saw the lot. So it's not a surprise that they got this major village going on there. But I'm hoping coppicing and watering will bring those Baccharis back. Baccharis are really tough. So I have some confidence.
Yeah, the other thing is that both the Baccharis and the Salvia bees bliss tend to root as they enlarge. And so that helps because you end up with, rather than sort of that one original root ball, you end up with multiple sources of root contact with the soil. And I saw somebody post a question in the chat just now. Maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves, but sort of those techniques about planting under oaks. And that made me think about that idea where one of the strategies we used was to plant things far away from the trunk that you would plant in one specific spot, and you would start by irrigating them just close to their root ball, and then they would expand out. And as they were in their growing season over those subsequent sort of late winter, early spring times when most of those dry natives are really growing, when the rainfall is adequate and the soil is more evenly moist, because there's not leaves on the oaks that time of year, you do get a decent amount of water under them. Those plants are then able to spread and put down roots and sort of extend their territory and their drought tolerance without having to actually apply irrigation near the trunk of the tree. So that was kind of one strategy. And I think the ground squirrel was not necessarily a pre-planned strategizing, you know, as much as it's kind of like, well, thank goodness the plants we chose there are rooting, and they'll probably come back. So that was good.
Okay, another question here is, how old is the garden now?
8 years old now.
8 years old. Okay. All right. My, how time
Gwen,
flies.
Gwen is a realtor who found the lot for us. Thank you.
Let's see. And someone wants to know where the chapter nursery is. And someone typed into the chat a link to the nursery homepage.
It's at Hidden Villa, if anybody knows Los Altos.
Hidden Villa, yeah.
On Moody Road.
Right.
And you can't go there right now. So later. And come volunteer later. It's fun.
And then somebody was saying Bornstein's book is unfortunately out of print, but I know there were some places that had it. I can't remember now. There was
Right, I did hear that too.
discussion on gardening with natives, some places that had it. I can't, they're probably already gone by now. That was several months ago.
But our chapter nursery is being maintained by volunteers, and you can buy plants online. The link, if you follow that link, or just go to our website, cnps-scv.org, we have an online ordering system, either for delivery now, or it's going to be for the fall plant sale pickup. You know, basically curbside pickup, but with reservations.
Right. So you'll stay in your car and people will put your plants in the car for you. So it's touchless.
Yeah.
Okay. This must be the one that Stephanie just answered about encourage layering of plants. Okay. And I think that's all I have. Unless somebody else has some new questions.
Yeah, I think the other thing I could add about that question about planting under oaks is that if you do have a very large mature oak tree, such as we have on this piece of property, one other very key strategy is to pick the season in which you plant the plants. So installing things in late spring, summer is not a good idea. What you'd like to try to do is time any new plants with the rains. So, I mean, sort of in a nutshell, it's time planting with the rainy season, plant as far as possible from the trunk, and really limit the summer watering, because that summer watering is what's going to cause your oak to not be happy over time, because it will introduce fungus that is not the beneficial type of fungus. When it's warm and wet in the summer, it's not a good thing for those large mature oaks.
So Stephanie, I have a question about the oaks. On the side of my property, we have squirrel planted coast live oaks. So I don't water under them in the summer, et cetera, but they're on the property line. And there's an intervening, maybe, 3-foot bed, and then there's lawn. I mean, the trees seem to be fine, but should I expect them to be short-lived?
I think a lot of it, excuse me, a lot of it depends on the age of the oaks. So when an oak tree is young, it can take a lot of water, and it's much more resilient to that summer watering. And sometimes when an oak is growing up and it's used to receiving regular water, it will do surprisingly well because it's adapted to that. And so I think it's kind of a question of the age of the oak tree and what it's used to. And, I've seen plenty of oak trees living near areas you wouldn't expect, including creeks, lawns, things like that. It's more like if you have the existing oak tree and you are introducing something new to its environment, whether it be a new watering schedule new plants, grading, changes of soil level, that kind of thing, when you have a very, very large oak. So that was one thing we had different maybe on this property, is we were trying to figure out how can we not change the grading around it and its watering system while still, this is the front door of the house, you have to do something around it. But yeah, in answer to yours, it may be that it's just fine. It may be that as the tree ages, it starts to resent the fact that there's watering near it. But I do see live oaks in those situations. When they've grown up to it, they get used to it.
Let's see, going back up here, I missed part of the question, one of the questions about other nurseries. Where are they that you got your plants from?
Oh, well, that Farewell to Spring Ruby Chalice is from Annie's Annuals. And also in Richmond is a wonderful nursery called Watershed Nursery, which grows more locally native plants. And they grow them in very phytophthora clean, which I really admire, conditions. And I understand our backyard nurseries, backyard gardens, we get plants from nurseries all over the place, but they have a wonderful selection of plants. If you're going to Richmond, you might look them up, Watershed Nursery. Also in Berkeley, there's a place called Oaktown Nursery, which I love. And then of course in Oakland, there's, what's the name of it? Vivian, help me out here.
East Coast Wilds?
No, okay, and then there's in Dogpatch, something Bay Nursery. I'm sorry, I don't go to those nurseries as often.
Oh, the Bay Natives is the one. Bay Natives is the one in Dogpatch. Yeah.
Yeah, Bay Natives, and then the one in Oakland is
East Bay.
East Bay Nursery. And then locally, we have Larry Voss and his nursery, which, does anybody remember the name?
Yeah,
Linda
Linda
Vista.
Linda
Vista Nursery.
Yeah.
And then I can't not mention Summer Winds in Palo Alto on San Antonio. Judy does a fabulous job trying to get really wonderful natives in there, and she's just great. So I appreciate her.
And I would, yeah, there's
so I noticed Cynthia asked about the time lapse that we did, which I showed at a Gardening with Natives function that we had once. And if we have time at the very end, I'll try to find that and I could show it. But otherwise, I'll put that on my Going Native garden tour page. I haven't posted any videos on that, and I'll put that on there, Cynthia. And then you can watch it to your heart's content.
Okay,
It's already there.
oh.
Okay, I want to add something about somebody. Melanie mentioned volunteering in the volunteering in the garden. I thought you were talking about volunteering in the nursery, right?
I was talking about volunteering at the nursery. Right now with COVID, we don't have space to do that, unfortunately, but someday we will be back in operation, and volunteering at the chapter's nursery is really fun and you learn a lot.
So that's a good reason to join our chapter news list, because when we can open for more volunteers, it will be splashed all over.
Yes.
Let's see.
We'll be having fireworks.
Yeah. There's one last question here. Could you talk about the birds and other wildlife you see in the garden besides the ground squirrels and
Oh, well, every kind of rodent there is, we have. My neighbors all have fruit trees, so they're just around. We have tremendous lizards. We have quite a lizard population. We have a lot of birds, and I'm sorry, I don't recognize them all. I'm really sad because I haven't seen any, well, we have like rufous-sided towhee. We have, wonderful birds that come in. But my favorite, I haven't seen for a while, it's one with the curved bill, the thrasher. The California thrasher I haven't seen. for
Oh,
years.
yeah.
But we have bluebirds now, so that's
Oh.
great. Yeah.
And there's a question about the pervious concrete. Is that used on driveways as well?
Stephanie.
Yes. So you can use the pervious concrete for pathways, patios, and driveways. And the only difference would be that you would have a thicker layer of the pervious concrete and a thicker layer of the base rock for anything that vehicles were driving on. And I can put the company that installed this product on the chat so that anybody who's interested can check it out. This product is actually really special. There are many different types of pervious concrete. And essentially what that is just concrete that is created with less sand in it so that there's more openings. But this specific one was researched and developed over many years by a local landscape contractor named Ryan Marlinghouse, who formerly owned his own landscaping contracting company and then got more and more into pervious concrete and was testing and just kind of working through different ways to install it. He came up with an extremely fine textured product that you can add color to, and it looks a lot like decomposed granite, but it has tremendous benefits because it actually lets the water soak right through the pathway and it doesn't track around. So it doesn't shift, it doesn't have erosion, it's very, very stable. And he came up with some methods of installing it that make the price point pretty close to decomposed granite. So it's a very versatile product. And so I'll put that in the chat.
Great.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, thank you. And that was a fantastic presentation. And I'd like to introduce our next presenter, Claire Elliott.
Madeline, I'm gonna
Yes,
let you wait until Melanie has a first crack because Melanie doesn't have enough space at her house to garden. So she's she's been one of the main pushers and movers for the native plant garden at Bull Park. So she has a number of slides she's going to share first. And then
okay, well, I'm just going to introduce you right now and then you
Okay.
guys can work it out.
All right.
So Claire will also be working on this presentation, and before joining Grassroots Ecology in 2006, she spent 30 years as an environmental scientist and engineer, including work with the US EPA and EOA Incorporated on industrial and stormwater pollution. In her nonprofit work, she developed a volunteer monitoring program for the Stevens Creek watershed, wrote pollution prevention procedures for coffee processors in Nicaragua, and was an environmental educator at Hidden Villa. Claire has a BS in biology from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, 1 year of freshwater ecology studies at the University of Uppsala in Sweden, and an MS in environmental engineering and science from Stanford. So take it away, Melanie and Claire.
Okay.
You gotta share screen.
Okay, just 1 second. I have to find my share screen thing. Okay, sharing screen. And I'm getting better at this. All right. Okay, this is a picture of what we always see, by the side of the road. It's invasive grasses and eucalyptus trees, and it doesn't show the whole extent, but this is what we're going to talk about. And giving you some context, this is a public garden. This is part of a park in Palo Alto, but this part of Palo Alto is called Barron Park, and we don't want to be called Palo Altans. We want to be our own people. So before becoming incorporated into the city of Palo Alto, we residents bought a remnant farmland from Cornelius Boll family and created a park, which borders Matadero Creek, which flows all year. And this park has a large grassy area paralleling the creek with many oaks and black walnut trees, and a very rural feeling, complete with donkeys in a pasture. On the opposite side of the long grassy area from the creek is a strip of land, which has evolved over the years from a commuter railway to a shared use pathway running from Stanford Industrial Park to Matadero Road near Foothill Expressway, approximately a mile long, width varying from 30 to 60 feet wide. This area was excavated and an underground culvert for flood control was installed over 40 years ago. Here you can see the road, the path, and extending into the distance, that strip of land. During various construction, the land became quite compacted in areas with practically no native vegetation surviving. Eucalyptus, privet near watered turf, and weedy invasive grasses took over. The water district and the city attempted plantings, but not much took. Fortunately, I don't have a picture of that. Instead, mature deer grass, sages, coffee berries, and redbud are in view because about 12 years ago, several determined gardeners, Shirley Finfrock and Carla Bliss, among others, mustered an irrigation system from the city, a grant from the Garden Club of Palo Alto for soil amendments, plants, and other expenses. With native plant designer Aggie Kehoe, they planned and planted a mostly native garden at the corner of Matadero and Laguna Avenues and successfully beautified the neglected area bordering the lawn. Aside from professional tree and heavy maintenance work, a group of neighboring gardeners aided Aggie in caring for the garden for over a decade. Maintenance and responsibility for the garden have since passed to another group of neighbors who are doing their best to carry on and extend the project. As you can see, it has developed into a beautiful, diverse garden. There's a large patch of Salvia spathaceae, a beautiful blooming buckeye, and many others such as manzanita. The newer group of gardeners, responding to decreasing biodiversity, want to expand the gardens to provide habitats for the animals that once lived here, focusing on providing plants for the local pollinator insects at the bottom of the food chain. We hope to supply the right plants at the right time of year for them to nectar on, to lay eggs on, and for their caterpillars to feed on. For instance, this manzanita is one of the few winter flowering plants. There's a lot for us to consider, and we're learning all the time. The land stewardship organization Grassroots Ecology, which was formerly part of Actera, has helped in many ways. Growing plants, providing volunteers, expertise, and especially inspiring us. The Water District recently awarded them a grant to plan and install a rain garden on the slope which adjoins the pathway. They planted in December 2018, and here it is in spring, or was it 2019? I forget, anyway, it was not long ago. There are a lot of walkers, dog walkers, joggers, bikers, as well as strollers, young and old, who use the pathway. The new plantings are very much appreciated by those visitors. Everybody had to comment when it looked like that, and as well as a multitude of insects. And even now in late summer, birds are enjoying the seeds of many annual plants. Here, a yellow-faced bumblebee is gathering pollen from Lacey Facilia. Claire Elliott, senior ecologist with GRE, will tell you more about the rain garden and other projects they've worked on in Bull Park in a bit. But first, I want to show you developments further down the pathway. Our habitat focus group is very ambitious and want to extend the garden as far as we can. In fall of 2018, after sheet mulching the area months before, which is laying cardboard to smother weeds and covering it with arbor mulch, we planted another 200 feet of the strip. We didn't amend the soil, but Aggie Kehoe designed the new garden, and it was planted by many volunteers from the neighborhood. We found the soil was very dry under the cardboard, and digging was very difficult. But we got it in, and there were a few native plants already growing in that area. We planted around a young valley oak and toyon with nude buckwheat and redberry, golden yarrow, and others. A golden yarrow is a wonderful pollinator plant, as well as being attractive and drought tolerant. Here in close-up, it's growing with some existing mugwort, which is one of the pioneering natives that grows along the entire strip of land. In this photo, goldenrod and asters are blooming. So it's late summer right now. Around another toyon, there are now gum plant and monkey flower blooming where there was once a privet thicket. Privet, yuck. Blooming in spring, checker bloom is an important larval host plant for many butterflies whose caterpillars provide food for nesting birds' chicks. And that project was so much fun. The following year, we decided to continue our planting another 250 feet to the main part of the park where the children's play structures are. This part of the strip is wider, and Claire found a number of Nacella pulchra grasses established from previous efforts were still there. We protected them from city weed whackers and sheet mulched around them. And this time before planting, we cut holes in the cardboard and very slow watered the spots we were planting in. We used these 5-gallon plastic buckets, I think like KK uses, with a tiny hole, and we just watered each spot. So not only was digging the hole easier, the plants did not suffer shock as their roots met thoroughly wet soil. The tall plants on the right are perennial sunflower, Helianthus californicus. We were able to bring some water from the original garden all the way to this plot. Therefore, a 5-foot strip at the edge gets watered, both from the lawn overspray and our Netafim drip lines. It's like having a riparian area where plants that will need water are happy, including this Hooker's evening primrose and lots of narrow leaf milkweed. Also, there's goldenrod, yarrow, sunflower, all kinds of things. Meanwhile, from July on this summer, we had monarchs and other butterflies on all the flowers. It was fun going out to water. Here, the monarch female is laying an egg on the leaf, so we're a success. In the drier areas, we planted very drought-tolerant plants such as nude buckwheat, California fuchsia, bush mallow, and pitcher sage. We will hand water them thoroughly through the first summers to establish them, then watch to see if they will survive without supplemental water. Depending upon what we learn, we will continue planting in the weedy strip. Oh, we will continue planting. Sorry, I have a cheat sheet. Either by seeding, planting, or a combination. However, we can get plants to survive in unwatered, compacted soil. I invite you to come to Bull Park and visit the garden. And Claire Elliott is here to talk more about the ecology of the area and what grassroots ecology is doing to restore nature here. Over to you, Claire.
All right. Thank you. Oop, I picked the right window and then it didn't show it to you guys. Sorry about that. There we go. Does that look better?
Yeah, great
All
group.
right. So yeah, I'm Claire Elliott and I'm with Grassroots Ecology. And I've been involved in various projects around Bull Park for many years, but none of them have been as much fun as working with Melanie and Rich Elder and Jeff Birch, who's here with the team from American Gothic with days with a team of young Mormons. And Jeff has been an amazing monarch daddy, growing lots and lots of milkweed, and Rich is amazing with irrigation, and Melanie is a mover and a shaker and knows the plants and has helped a lot with planning and is amazing weed puller. So it's been but there's a whole lot of other people from Barron Park who've helped out, but those three are a mainstay of making this project happen. But I'm going to back up a little bit and talk a little bit about the site and the projects that we work on here at the site. So I don't know how many of you know about Grassroots Ecology. We're a nonprofit that's been around for decades in different forms. Peninsula Conservation Center started out projects at Arastradero Preserve and San Francisco Creek, actually it was Bay Area Action at Arastradero Preserve. Anyway, so we've been around a long time, but we've morphed in different forms from Actera and now into Grassroots Ecology. Actera still exists doing energy related projects, but the stewardship program is now called Grassroots Ecology. And so we have a mission to involve and educate the public to restore local ecosystems. And we do it all over the peninsula, from the foothills down to the bay and various sites, a lot of them through partnerships with municipal agencies and Mid-Pan, but some public, private. Well, we do some projects like at churches. Our rain, you can see we're working on rain garden projects, rain gardens or rain barrels. We're calling it the Greening Urban Watershed Project, and it was funded by Valley Water. So everywhere where you see a little rain barrel is a project related to rain capture. And before COVID, we were engaging up to over 12,000 people a year. Unfortunately, that's changed, but we have some projects I'll mention that are still going on. So one of the areas we work is Barron Park. Bowl Park is down here in this corner. It's a sideways image because I wanted it to fit this way on the screen. This area is Strawberry Hill. Can you all see my cursor when I move it on here? So this triangular area is called Strawberry Hill, and that is a site that I first got, when I first started working with grassroots ecology in December of 2006. The next year I learned about the fact that this spot, I live across El Camino in the Ventura neighborhood, but I often hiker, run through here. Anyway, I heard and saw the results of the school district contractor herbiciding that hill. And so I got active and started talking to people in the community about, well, couldn't we involve the school district, the kids in environmental education, their green team, their garden club, and do habitat restoration on that hill instead of herbiciding the heck out of it. Unfortunately, well, I'll get back to that. I'll get back to that story because I want to step back and talk about what makes this site what it is. I just think it's really cool to look at the underlying geology of a site. And as in all of this area, it's very mix mastered, as they say, lots and lots of different kinds of soils and rocks that have been churned together from faulting and erosion. So we're working in this area, which is mostly alluvium. And I don't know if you all know about San Francisco Estuary Institute, but there's a link in my slides, which I think you'll be able to get to after this, to their report on the historical ecology of Western Santa Clara Valley. And there's a lot of really interesting information about what used to be in this area. I think the most fascinating thing is the way these creeks just fanned out and formed sossles. I had a neighbor who came here in the 50s, and she remembers rowing a boat in a pond down about Middlefield, which is around here somewhere. So things have changed a lot, but not so much in the area of Oak Savannah as in the areas that used to be sossle and where the water's really, the creeks have all been channelized, so the whole hydrology has changed. But the first people that managed the land, as everybody knows, but not everybody knows the specifics about it, and I have a lot still to learn, were the Mwekma Ohlone tribe. I think the maps, whoops, I'm sorry, the map showing the different tribal names, they're all different languages even were spoken apparently. One of the remaining names is this Tamian, because there's a train station, the Tamian station still. According to Douglas Graham's report from the Barron Park neighborhood, it was the Puichon tribal group in the Barron Park area. So they were managing the land in a variety of ways, including some controlled or some intentional burns in order to have more of the seeds that the grasslands brought them. But the land was very heavily changed when the Europeans came in, obviously. And this is a really cool picture from 1904 that shows looking up towards the foothills across Embarcadero Road in Palo Alto. So you can see how it was oak savanna, most of the foothills area. So we still have some of those remaining oaks. Unfortunately, a lot of them were removed for houses and orchards along the way. But another thing Melanie mentioned was the railroad track that went through. So the bike path that we're planting on along was originally a railroad track. And this shows the pathway that goes through. And I was surprised to learn it went until 1964. The train line continued to operate along there. So what we're doing in this area is partly funded by, whoops, well, actually, no, let me first show you the way the land is set up here. The underneath this railroad track is a flood control project. And the way it works is water from Barron Creek built up in this flood basin, and it goes into an 8-foot box culvert that kids even go, you hear kids on skateboards and their music playing down underneath there, not particularly safe probably, but so there's this long box culvert that has been, the bike path and vegetation were put on top of. And Melanie mentioned the purple needle grass that were along the path there. They hydro-seeded with purple needle grass and planted some valley oaks along here. And a lot of them are still there. They also put in lupins, both arroyo and lupinus bicolor. And unfortunately, because of the herbiciding and mowing that the school district has done, a lot of that has gone by the wayside. But I'd love to see that come back. And that's a project for the future, is getting more of those lupins back in this area. Where the donkeys are, there's a lot of bulbs, California native bulbs, that are still growing in the lot behind them. So there's some remnant native habitat. But this is the area where we've been expanding down this direction with a native garden, and where our rain garden project is, that I'll explain to you next. So, yeah, I also wanted to just really quickly mention that we do a lot of educational projects, watershed education and creek monitoring. These are some neighbors from Barron Park, Bob and Ann Knopp. You probably know Bob Fogelsong. And then kids from Gunn and Pally come out to do macroinvertebrate monitoring with us. And then there's community volunteers that have come out over the years. These two projects, one along the bank of Matadero and one farther up an area where we've planted a lot of natives along the bike path, were funded because somebody painted their roof with a metacrylic roof coating, and they did it right before a rain came. So all that coating was washed off into the creek. So the company was fined, and the city was good about, instead of putting it just into the city coffers, they gave us money for doing some environmental benefit projects for the creek. So we planted a number of plants on the creek bank and farther up. And then, you know, as Melanie doesn't have enough weeding at home, so she comes out and weeds with us. This is Melanie with some big hawk's beard, I believe they were. We've also been, I'm particularly driven to remove privets. So, you know, a big part of native gardening is making sure you're getting rid of the non-natives, and privet is a pet peeve of mine. In fact, I recently wrote a blog for our website called Privets and Other Pet Peeves. And so, you know, if you want to learn about some more of the invasives that I think are a particular concern and how to deal with them and what alternatives to put in, that article is available on our website. These are the bags of stinkwort that we pulled up from Strawberry Hill. That was one of our first projects, was removing that stinkwort plant that came in. And then we've had youth help and come. So these young people have weed wrenches, and they're pulling the bigger privets out that you can pull out with weed wrenches. And this is this year's team. We had a summer stewards group with high school kids. They were all very good about wearing their masks and social distancing. And they came every week for 7 or 8 weeks, and maybe 9 weeks, and pulled weeds and did a little bit of extra work in the rain garden area as well. And they all did a capstone educational project. One of them did a project on missing plants in Palo Alto. So they were like missing posters for people or for pets, but they were missing plants. And then this young lady, I'm not going to play her video unless we have time at the end, but she did this amazing song to the tune of Old Susanna about pulling up the weeds, and with an educational part in the middle. So we'll see if we have time. I'll play a little bit of it for you if I can. So as Melanie said, we've helped with the extension project. This is more volunteers that we've recruited to come out with for a planting day. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about our rain garden project, because this is something that I think a lot of people should be considering doing at home. This was an area that received a lot of rainfall. The runoff from this bike path was puddling here. So city had put in a perforated pipe to carry that water to this storm drain, but it wasn't working anymore. The perforated pipe had collapsed. And so we got some funding from Valley Water, and the city helped us with their backhoe to trench along that area and remove that perforated pipe. Then we put in several yards of base rock and bioremediation soil, and then this sinuous pattern of river rock. And the pictures keep getting in the way. There we go. So this is what it looked like when were done installing the materials. We mulched around the river rock. And then this is one of the first storms. I took a little video to show how the water was running off, and it was directed right into our stream and running on down. So the benefit to this of perforated pipe is perforated pipe, which is carrying the water off, putting it straight into a storm drain, which is going to cause a lot of erosion on creek banks, where this system is allowing the water to infiltrate along the way. And then when it gets down to the storm drain at the bottom, it can't enter the storm drain without overflowing the rock, the drainage rock around the storm drain. So the hope is that a whole lot more water is recharging into the groundwater instead of causing flooding and erosion along the creeks. So then we vegetated it, and you saw a lot of nice pictures Melanie had of the annuals the first year. We put in a number of small perennials. We didn't have enough budget to put in a lot of perennials, and we're going to be keeping on adding some every year. But we added a lot of things like yarrows and golden yarrows and buckwheat and sages. The golden yarrows have done quite well along this stretch. The Achillea millefolium, the gophers are just loving. And every time I go out there, another one of them has been chawed off at the roots and dragged down in under. But the buckwheats and the golden yarrows, and what else do we have out there? We have a lot of everlasting, because it's one of my favorite plants. So we're getting a lot of insects coming in. We had a common buckeye and other beautiful butterflies. And then finally, we started seeing the monarchs laying eggs, which is very exciting. And I thought this was fun to see that I don't know how many of you have used iNaturalist, but it's a really cool tool to use for exploring an area, if not for adding your own observations. And as you can see, this is a picture of the observations made by 2018. And then after 2018, a number of them were made by one person who was particularly interested in pollinators, but you can see from this table, oops, sorry, keep clicking the wrong place, but you can see from the table that there are 16 different observers and 66 species and 41 people helping identify them. So there's a lot of different, I mean, it's really impressive to me. This is, I don't know, what do you think, Melanie, a couple acres at the most? To find 66 species in there is really amazing. So that's what I wanted to share today. Hopefully someday we'll be able to bring big groups like this out. This is me and Melanie helping to manage this group of volunteers. And yeah, we'll see when it is that we can do this next. But I'd love to have any questions, and you can go to our website or email me if you have any specific questions. How are we doing on time? Could Melanie and I share one of our videos, or we only have 17 minutes?
There might be questions, Claire.
Let's see, there's a few questions. Does Bull Park get any irrigation or just the rainfall?
Well, you see the lawns there. When they're watering the lawns, yes, there's a lot of water being used. The city would like to cut back on use of water, so they're not interested in us using a lot of water, but they're willing to let us have some water to establish plants. So when 12 years or so ago, when the original native garden was put in, they did give water to the group and help them set up an irrigation controller. But now we've just taken some water that isn't being used there. We have a couple of valves and we moved it up 450 feet. So we can't go any farther. Our water is tapped out. But like I said, we do have a riparian area that will always get water irrigation. And of course it gets overspray from the lawn, so it's really happy. And then we've got an area where we're trying to establish drought resistant plants so that hopefully they will establish and continue. And we're also going to experiment with seeding in plants, because I think that's like grasses and smaller plants. I think we might have more success with that than putting in container plants.
Okay.
I apologize for sharing my screen for so long. I couldn't find the stop share button. It finally came back to me. And I appreciate, I think that's Vivian pointing out that we also have a nursery. People aren't all that aware of it because it's not one you can easily just go to, but because it's up at Foothills Park, but you can definitely place orders from us, and it's become easier because we now have online ordering for our plants.
Great.
I was wondering if you planted riparian plants around where in your water garden area, in the rain garden, where that water gets channeled to, where it's sort of overflowing and soaking in.
Well, we're not planting any perennial riparian plants because it is very dry in the summer there.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're trying not to water. I mean, there is a couple of remnant sprinklers from when it was a lawn, but we'd rather not use them.
So how long is your video? We don't have lots of compliments, not a lot of questions. Are we?
Right.
Melanie, did you want to run your time lapse video?
You know, I'll put it on my garden page on the Going Native Garden Tour, if that still is possible, KK, to add something to that.
I believe this is already on your page.
Oh, okay. All right.
So you should be able to share it if you want.
Okay, so Cynthia, you can go to that. It's not very high quality, but I'd like to hear the song about pulling weeds.
Well, I can fast forward to, let's see, I need to be able to, when I make sure I have the right window, then I'm not seeing the share function. Here we go. I'll fast forward through to a couple minutes in because it's really fun.
Thank you.
With this young lady, I'll just play a couple minutes of it. Come on. Why did that happen?
The mysteries of computers.
Yes, boy. Let me know if you can hear the audio.
You can hear it.
So I'll go forward to about 2 minutes and you'll hear the chorus, which is what.
We're making room for native plants, the ecosystem needs. All the bugs aren't gonna eat them, so we're pulling up the weeds. So, why are non-native plants so bad for native flora and fauna? Let's look at an example of an invasive weed that threatens our local ecosystems, glossy privets. Insects and birds rely on native plants as a food source, but local bugs evolved to eat local plants, so they don't touch glossy privets. You can tell that bugs don't eat privets because there are no holes in their leaves. Birds need the protein from these bugs to fly, lay eggs, and feed their babies. But birds can't eat bugs if they aren't there. To fill their bellies, these hungry birds snack on the privet's purple berries. But these berries don't have the nutrients birds need. Privet fruit acts as a laxative,
so the birds poop out the berries without getting protein powder. Most people don't know how bad privets are for the environment. Some people even plant them in their yards. A better choice is planting native alternatives like toyon, wax myrtle, and hollyleaf cherries, which give birds and bugs the food they need. And to make room for those plants, we're pulling up the weeds.
That was precious.
Isn't that amazing? I was so impressed with that young lady. I'm trying to figure out how to quit it.
So did she put this on something where it's gone viral? I haven't noticed it on Facebook.
I think we put it on our Instagram page, but I need to make sure that it gets more places.
Well, it will be on the CNPS or the Going Native Garden Tour YouTube channel.
That's right.
So we can all go to that.
Well, and can the slides be posted as well so that people can run the whole video if they have that?
Okay, what's going to happen is we're recording this on YouTube, and give us, I don't know, I think it takes about a day. This talk will be up on our YouTube channel. So people can
But
go
on the garden page, can you also have a link to the slides?
I can
Oh,
do
I
this,
see.
but I will
send them
send you
individually.
email.
Okay.
Great.
Well, I love that ending. If there are no further questions, I think we could probably say goodnight, and don't forget about the next presentation on October 10th at 10 a.m., which will be a video of the nursery, and you can see what we have available for sale. It's a great way to do your shopping. Instead of a little thumbnail, you can look at pictures and ask questions about them.
Ask questions. Yeah, that's great.
And ask questions, ask what might work in your yard. And our nursery is really pretty too. And sometimes there's wildlife there. And sometimes just chickens. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Melanie and Claire and Stephanie. And we'll see you next time.
Okay, bye.